Hello and welcome to Beyond the Lens. I'm JD. Today we got a special guest. We've got Scott Bennett from The Path Less Traveled in. And brought Scott in because we sit down, we talk a lot. We talk a lot about everything from music to websites to Twitter to all the social media stuff. And we've done that for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And you're a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. You've read all his books. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about a lot of the stuff that Gary talks about, and I purchased his most recent book, Crushing It, and we're sort of here today to sort of talk about Crushing It and a lot of Gary's principles and all that kind of stuff, and that's sort of the focus of the talk today.
Why we're here.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I got turned on to Gary probably a year and a half ago, I'm going to guess. A lot of friends... or not a lot, but some of my friends like him. I think he kind of appeals to the younger demographic because a lot of people in the younger demographic have baby boomers as parents who say, unless you get a degree and unless you do this, you're going to amount to nothing. And this generation has a lot of pressure financially with homes being super expensive, and with you graduate with your degree with thousands of dollars of debt, etc.
Right.
And that's the world that like parents almost want for their kids, because they want the best, because they don't want them to be stuck working at Walmart because they didn't get a degree like they did or their cousin did or their friend did.
Right.
And so when there's a guy who's of that generation saying like, you can live your passion if you want, that excites a lot of people. And I think probably more people are excited than like are actually able, like not everyone can follow the formula, not everyone has the discipline, not everyone has the right skills to make that happen. But like, I think even if you implement some of the concepts that he talks about, or if you're waiting for permission, a lot of people are like, my parents want me to do this and I'm doing it just for my parents' sake. And it's not because I love it, it's not because I want to do it, but if I don't, my dad will disown me or hate me or whatever.
Right.
So I think that's the appeal to a lot of people, is like they have someone who's on their side who says, yeah, you can live your passion, who really understands social media and enables people to just maybe feel empowered. I don't know if that's it.
Right.
I can't say that like these are the reasons. I had very supportive parents who were always like, do what you love, always, So I think maybe in a sense I see that it's a continuation of like what my parents always taught me, but I think everyone's situation is different.
Right.
And everyone's going to get different things out of Gary Vee. Some people like can't stand him to be like...
Right,
he's a snake oil salesman, which I think is a fair thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, my first impression of Gary Vee was that he is, and he admits that he gets this a lot, is that he's kind of like one of those motivational speakers that...
Like Tony Robbins or...
Yeah, and to me, a lot of times, it's not necessarily that they're saying anything much. No. They're just kind of rehashing the same thing over and over again. And even after reading his book, to be fair, he does kind of rehash, but he owns this kind of thing. He repeats what he says. Nothing that he has said in Crushing It is nothing that he hasn't really given away. I mean, that's part of his strategy as well, which is an interesting strategy. But it's... You can get what's said in the book for free.
Totally.
Essentially.
You just watch any of his videos.
You can watch any of his videos. You can listen to him talk. You can do all that kind of stuff. He is sort of, giving out that information for free anyways.
It's kind of like James Bond. You watch 22 James Bond movies. Really, the plot is more or less the same, but people keep coming back because of the way it's presented.
Yeah, I mean, well, with James Bond, you never watch a James Bond movie and go, I don't know if James is going to make it out of this one alive, right? I mean, that's never something that you're going to discuss. It's just kind of like, this is what's happening, right? So, I mean, it's interesting in the sense that I don't think he's, what he's saying is good. Some of the stuff he's saying, I think, is really, really good. Mm. I went through the book. I flagged a bunch of pages and all that kind of stuff. But for me myself, I don't think it was anything what I would consider groundbreaking. However, that being said, if you are new to the internet, you're not, a millennial or younger. I don't know what they call the up and coming group. The new millennials,
Pod eaters.
The Tide Pod eaters. Very, very valid point there. It could be Generation Tide Pod. Some of these things are not necessarily intuitive. I mean, there's a lot of things that I've seen over the while, and we've discussed, with businesses in the city that we live in, doing things on social media that are not going to help you in the slightest, and do things that are extremely polarizing, that sort of, it doesn't promote your business. When you start, talking politics in Alberta, because politics is a big thing right now, it can be polarizing in a sense. So. And,
and it's like almost like 50-50 for where the politicians stand in Alberta, or people stand politically in Alberta.
Right,
so
right.
The moment you pick a side, you're losing half your audience.
There's a weird kind of divide, and no matter what side you're on or what side you go with, there's the extremes to that side. And if you start siding with something, you can lose out on business. So, for example, 100%. A food business talking about politics instead of showing what they have on their menu, all that kind of stuff, the live entertainment that they have, all these kind of things, instead of focusing on those things, and focusing on politics. Do you think Oprah would be a great, president of the United States? Do you, what do you think of Donald Trump? Like those kind of things will start conversations, but you might end up with a big mess on your hands, right?
It might not end well at all.
I mean, I'm sure everybody that is watching this right now and listening has had some sort of form of confrontation or argument on some form of social media at some point, whether it's your personal page or your business page.
Yeah.
So those are not necessarily things that you want to get into. So
not typically.
Yeah. So I mean, back to Gary's book. I mean, he sets out some decent strategies for how to get engagement, all those kind of things. He had the book before, Jab, Jab, Right Hook.
That would be this one.
Yeah. So it's like give, ask, right? So instead of just asking, it's about giving. And I sort of understand, where he's coming from. My issue with sort of the book is that he does mention it. In all fairness, he does mention it, but he doesn't mention that whatever you're doing, whether you are making coffee, making music, taking photos, making videos, whatever the case may be, that really your content or your product is king.
Of course,
if you don't have a product, you can fall into your blue in the face, and chances are nothing's going to come out the other end. You're just going to have a couple social media platforms that you post on, and that's...
Well, totally. Like, I don't know what Rebecca Black is doing now, but Friday came out. Visually, it looks good because it was some Hollywood movie production thing. The song was terrible. Everyone hated it.
Yeah.
She had a cameo in a Katy Perry video.
Yep.
And then, I don't know. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe she's a huge YouTube star now, but like...
Right.
I don't... Like, her content wasn't good, so she didn't have the longevity. She had a short-term...
Yeah,
bump in the whatever.
And the thing is, when you're talking about this stuff as well, like there's always a market for you. Mm-hmm. Whatever you do, there's a market, there's a niche, and that's the great thing about the internet. In the past, maybe before the internet, you didn't have the opportunities necessarily to get your voice out there, to basically get your product to market because you didn't know where to find that niche necessarily. Mm-hmm. And the internet makes it a lot easier, especially with hashtags and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, everything. It's like everything's filed under a hashtag. It's like a big global file, file folder. Basically, you open that up, and then everyone's opinion in the world on whatever that topic is shared there.
Yeah.
So if you want to collaborate with somebody who has similar ideas, like that's open, and they could be in Spain, and you could be in China, or you could be in the U.S., and you could have that collaboration because the hashtag opened it up.
Yeah.
So you're very right. Like that, the way the internet has moved forward has made niche markets flourish, I think.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see that, like, just as a whole, like comic books. I think when you were growing up, were very niche. They weren't cool. It wasn't like like the nerds would watch it, and Dungeons and Dragons was like a nerdy thing. Now Stranger Things is basically about Dungeons and Dragons. It's the #1 show. Marvel is like killing the box office with all their stuff, and like I think in part the world allowed all the internet allowed all the comic book people to come together, and allowed these movies, these great stories to be told on film, and then it has kind of revolutionized the film industry. Everything needs to be a big blockbuster now. Everything needs to be like it's not just Spider-Man, it's the Avengers, and then it's not just the Mummy. They're doing the Mummy and Jekyll and Hyde and all that stuff merged together. Everything is trying to make this big blockbuster opera kind of thing because of that. And I think the internet has created those tools to allow these people to come together and collaborate.
Right. So one of the interesting things, and I always talk about this, and anybody that knows me and follows me personally knows that, number one, I am self-branding, or I've been self-branding myself for quite a while.
For a long time.
I used to be, I mean, a lot of people that are potentially watching this, and if you follow me on Twitter, you know my handle is Paint Inc. Paint Inc. is my trademark. It's my business. It's something I started 20 plus years ago. And I produced mountain bike films, clothing, all sorts of things, and did that. And I was never at the forefront. Even my airbrush was Paint Inc. Designs, so I was never really kind of it. It was the company name, all that kind of stuff. I could walk in a room, I could say, "Hey, my name's JD," and people would be like, "Who?" It's like, "I painted your helmets." Oh, okay. It was that kind of disassociation, right? So Gary Vaynerchuk talks about self-branding and investing in yourself, which is good, and in some ways it's a risk as well, right? Because if you brand yourself a certain way, you're
branded for life because it's social media.
Yeah, it's social media. It lasts forever. But the truth of the matter is whether, for example, a company like Paint Inc., my own company, were to succeed, fail, collapse tomorrow, all that kind of stuff. If I still have my own personal brand, I can still take that and develop it. I can take it and bring that to somewhere else. So it's the investment is in myself versus something else that's there. And I mean, I've done it in the past where I've ditched off companies or sold properties and all that kind of stuff. I mean, my name, wasn't necessarily attached to them fully, but, ultimately they went away. And I didn't really gain anything other than the monetary stuff. So, I mean, investing in yourself is a huge thing that he talks about. And, it's, I agree with it totally, because it's something I started doing about probably, well, when did we meet? At least
Landmark events.
About 5 years ago.
I think so.
Five or 6 years ago. So I had already started self-branding well before this book had come out, and sort of making that switch. I could have easily done painting, photography, and expanded off that, but I decided at that point that I needed to kind of bring things, to a more personal level where people could see my face and understand that me. And I mean, Gary's done a good job of that for himself. I mean, he's the face. I mean, a lot of people I don't even think know that he was ever in a wine business.
A lot of people will just see him and be like, "Man, that's that guy with the really high voice who just talks about just doing it and curses all the time."
Right.
And that's a lot of my friends. That's their opinion of him when I'm like, "Hey, you got to check this out," because they're not really. A lot of my friends aren't necessarily like. I wouldn't call myself an entrepreneur, but like entrepreneurial tendencies. Like I like certain ventures, but like I have a job. I'm not self-employed, and I don't know if I ever would be able to do that. So I don't think I'm the full market for the kind of Gary Vee person. But a lot of my friends are like, I want my 9 to 5. I want to go home and play Xbox. Like, I love my life like this. Like, so I'll be like, hey, read this book. And they're like, not worth it for me.
And that's something, he touches on briefly, which I don't think he touches on enough, is he talks about working long days. He talks about working 15-hour plus days. It's like if you have a 9 to 5, you go to work for 8 hours, and then you go home, and then you work your second job, which is your passion or your passion project, and you work another 8 to 10 hours. Then you get maybe 6 hours sleep, and then you do it all over again. And he's about long game versus short game. So he's not saying if you do this tomorrow, you're going to have 10 million followers on Twitter or all 10 million YouTube subscribers. He's not talking about that. He's talking about long. He says it may take years to get to that point. And I mean, I think that's sort of, for me, I think when people look to him, they're looking for the quick answer. They're looking for the quick results. Right. They're looking at all that kind of stuff, and that's not what this is. It's absolutely not what it is. And I mean, some people get success, and they get success really fast. They hit the right target, they get the right person, they get the right person to help promote them. They get, there was people like, I got the attention of Oprah, and Oprah put this out because it was on the own, and then I was a millionaire. That's great. That's going to happen to like
1%
less
of 1%
less,
of 1% of the world.
A lot of other people, I mean, what really is success? Is it, running your own business, being your own boss, making, a comfortable living, or is it, are you talking multi-millions, and it'll vary from person to person. Like you said, some people are happy just to, make enough to make it, have their weekends with their kids, all that kind of stuff. Nothing wrong with that. Not everybody is about building multi-million.
The empire. Yeah. And I think like the concepts that are in here, so he'll be like 6-8 hours sleep, like all those long days, but like, say your goal is just to be a niche market in your city. Like you don't want a global thing or whatever the case is. and say you do 3 hours of social media a night every day, but you're disciplined and you do it, I don't even think it necessarily means like the 3 hours of what you do in that 3 hours is what the accomplishment is. I think it's the habit building and habit forming of the consistent delivery and the consistent like following what you want to do. Because if you do something literally every day for 3 hours for like 2 years, you're going to be better than you were before. Like eventually there's a diminishing point where unless you're like constantly applying yourself, like for guitar, for example, the first like year I played, it was like probably an exponential curve. And then you kind of taper off. And like, once you know how to do things, you find less challenges. And then guitar is a big, long thing where some people just keep going and get amazing. There's medium level stuff. And like, I don't know where I fit, but every year I get better at guitar, but nowhere near at the point where it was at the beginning. So I think people could follow this concept for 2 hours and really, 2 hours a night, let's say, or something like that. And they could really improve their socials. So like after I read Jab, Jab, Right Hook, I was, my biggest struggle in anything in life is consistency. And I'll admit that 100%. So like I can do something really well for like a month, but I have a hard time keeping up at that pace, or I just get distracted, ADD kicks in, whatever happens. I don't know. It's who I am. It kind of tapers off. But for about 2 months, I read Jab, Jab, Right Hook and then implemented his practices. And our Instagram following went from like 700 to 1,000. So I did grow about 300 people in about 2 months based on the amount of work I was putting in. And then it's not even that I was tired of it. I just almost forgot and started doing other things. And sometimes you spend so much time on the social media and the marketing that you're not actually spending time on content or like what your base thing is. So as a band, our music was getting neglected because I was spending so much time on our socials. Yeah. And when you're in a band that doesn't have a record label to do any of this for you, you've got to do everything. And then that's where it comes in, where you can only do so much. Right. And instead of feeling guilty that you're not hitting the 16 hours, because it's not like he's some, I don't know, like God or something that like has made these rules. Like take what's in there, implement it as best as you can, and you'll get better results than you would if you weren't doing it. That's how I see pretty much anything he offers.
And in all fairness, what he did with the wine business, I mean, that business was already established, worth millions of dollars, and he had money to invest in it. And I think a lot of people miss that as well, right? I mean, if you have money can solve some of your problems. I'll say that right off the hop. If you have money to invest and you're not afraid to lose it, and you put it to work for you, you're going to absolutely make some gains. Yep. I mean, there are things even on social media, like I mean on YouTube, for example. Me myself being a YouTuber and having a YouTube channel, people will say, "Oh, don't do this, don't do that. You got to build organically and all that kind of stuff." I'll tell you right now, it's bullshit. Yeah. It's you can buy ads, you can get Facebook focus ads, you can, and we did that when we first started Lloyd and JD. We had a little bit of a spike, and the reason we had a spike was, and a lot of people don't know this story, is Lloyd went out because he didn't have a credit card, and he got a prepaid credit card, and he went and he bought basically ads on Facebook to direct them to the podcast, and that's how we saw the initial growth. Right. Because nobody knew about it. Nobody knew anything about it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it wasn't like a ton of money that was invested. It was maybe 10 or $20 or $30 that he invested, but that got the ball rolling. And then I got a bunch of
ago when Facebook ads cost less. So that went pretty far 5 years ago.
Yeah. And I did the same with Google ads. I found a coupon where I could sign up for $100 worth of Google ads. Yeah. And I put that on the podcast as well. And we saw some growth there, essentially, just from that. And that's not because, we were doing great.
18-hour days.
18-hour days and all that kind of stuff. It's just we had somebody working for us. Yeah. If you have somebody that can do those kind of things, it's going to pay off for you to some degree, right? I mean, advertising has a certain amount of effect, and, if you keep on getting, hammered and hammered and hammered and hammered, all that kind of stuff. But, with ad blockers and all that kind of stuff, sometimes it doesn't go as far, and, you're paying your money for nothing because people don't see them. But, I mean, it's definitely, something that can be done. Like I said, it was a couple $100 investment right at the beginning that we didn't really do any of it. Like we just, I think it was a few bucks out of Lloyd's pocket, and like I said, $100 worth of AdSense credit that, we utilized, and we had a huge spike. I think one of our first videos, and part of it was who we had in that. It was Leanne Mosley doing the makeup thing. Yeah. And I think it spiked, 20,000 views in a matter of no time. And that was just sort of the boost that we need. If we had maintained that, we would probably be in a different space than we are now. But, we weren't necessarily going to invest all that kind of money because, you know, completely unsure, you know.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we didn't know what we were either. It was a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
It was just kind of getting ourselves out. It was self-branding. Lloyd and JD was a self-branding experiment.
Yeah.
You know, we were both artists. Nobody knew who we were necessarily. Some people may have. You know, we just wanted to get out there, get our voices heard, tell our stories, you know, and hopefully people just develop some sort of personal attachment to you or kind of say, these guys are funny, these guys are cool, or, you know, even these guys are idiots. And just kind of go with it. But I mean, it's funny because I would say more people know me now, even though I'm not doing projects that are as big because I was doing the films before.
Yeah.
You know, because I was behind the scenes, behind the camera, and I wasn't making myself the focal point. So a lot of people will know me now in comparison when I released basically 2 full films to DVD that were basically released worldwide.
Right.
I mean, it's night and day. It's kind of interesting. But also back, I mean, that's 15 years ago. I mean, YouTube didn't exist and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean...
Yeah, and also, I think it helps. Your first year, you guys had guests every week.
Yeah.
So your guests would know your face. And
their following would know their face.
And then, like, on a weekly basis, that would keep changing. And then, I don't know. It was a really good way to go about it, I think, personally. Yeah. I think a lot of people do know who you are now.
And sorry, Gary, but that was all done without you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I wanted to say this. I think one of the reasons that, like, if I had any of my friends who are, like, similar to this guy, it would be you, because you'll do your day job and then you'll do photos. Like, you'll go shoot it. Like, you came to our Silverstein show after a day of work. I think it was a Wednesday. I can't remember the day of the week it was. Came to our show, set up cameras, filmed our set, left right when we were done. You had dinner with us too. And then you left. And then Silverstein was still playing, and I had a video of my band playing from 2 hours before, edited and on YouTube and posted. And that kind of work ethic, like, I don't have very many friends who are able to do that kind of thing. And I think it's not revolutionary to you because this is part of your DNA. It's part of who you are. And I think for the people who have this just as part of their DNA, either they understand humans and they understand psychology and marketing and self-branding, or they have that drive. They always need to be doing something and have that tick. I think this is going to be very self-explanatory and almost like, why am I reading this? This is like...
Right. And I found that. And we've had conversations about that where I'm like, I don't find any of this terribly groundbreaking.
Right.
Like, you know, he's not saying anything, you know, that I don't terribly know. It's not saying that you can't find value in something. Like, I mean, there's some things that I pulled out of the book, like, that makes sense to me. A lot of it was, you know, reaffirming what I do already, which is as a general practice. You know, the example of the video from the Silverstein show and all that kind of stuff, that comes from just working as a photographer in music for as long as I have, because for me, it's, you want to hit people in social media when they're talking about it. So, for example, they go to the show, they watch you guys, they go, man, I enjoyed that set from The Path Less Traveled. They had that guy singing in the crowd. Everybody was cheering. They did that Beartooth cover, all that kind of stuff. So they go on social media, you know, they'll tweet out or they'll look for stuff, you know, they'll check out your thing, and then they'll see the tag, and then they'll see it again, and then they're like, oh, I was just at that show. Yeah. And they automatically share it, and then that's where you get the momentum, right? Yeah. Whereas if you release that 2-3 weeks later, I'm not saying that it doesn't have any value. I'm just saying the impact. The potential impact is lessened, right? I mean, you know, they're not going to see it as much and all that kind of stuff. But speaking of that as well, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you get some recognition out of that as well, because you did a seminar with those guys, and, you know, they knew exactly who you were and all that kind of stuff, and you got some interesting advertising through that.
That was cool. Yeah. So there's something called Music Mentors Online, and it's basically the drummer from band called We Came as Romans. He's using his connections in the music scene to do webinars on a weekly basis. So he'll have people from Beartooth, We Came as Romans, obviously, because they're all his friends. I Prevail, just like everyone in the metalcore scene, basically. And they'll talk about branding and bands and stuff. And he runs his own digital marketing agency. So I think he's really smart in what he's doing. But Wage War was on there, and I was able to mention, hey, we opened for you guys a while ago. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I remember your band. He said our band name on the webinar. So now anytime anyone buys that webinar and watches day one, they'll hear my band name, and they'll hear that it's being recognized by someone from, you know, a more established band. So like that was like something that I was kind of hoping for, and then saw the opportunity and jumped on it. And I think that's also a concept that Gary kind of talks about. It's just like, when he started Wine Library TV, which was one of the first YouTube channels to talk about wine. He says it's the first. I don't know if it is. I'm not going to go back and do the research, but one of the first when YouTube was nothing. He did 1,000 episodes where basically no one was watching. Yeah. But then that content was always there. People came back later, and he sort of demystified wine. Where was I going with that, though? That's the question. He's talking about, attack. So he thought about like, hey, I want to make a wine TV show, and he told the guy, go to Best Buy, buy a camera, we'll film it. They shot it that day, and it was posted. Instead of him going, hey, I should do that, but what if I'm not a good host? What if I'm not great at this? And et cetera, and then self-doubt, and then that never happens. And then without those 1,000 episodes of Wine Library, I don't know if we'd have 3 of his books on our table right now. Right. Because he didn't have that. And I think the more you do something, like you can say, you've been doing a podcast for 5 years and vlogging for over a year. If you watch your first podcast and how much more comfortable you are now in front of the camera, how much more comfortable you are now talking to with microphones and stuff like that. Like it's not that you were bad before, but you improve when you do something consistently. And in terms of what's happened in Calgary, I think you guys are probably the longest running podcast that I'm aware of that delivers content every week. Yeah, and most people don't do that. So your content delivery is like really good, and he's all about that, having the consistent content delivery. Yeah. Do we have a comment? We do have a comment. Jerry's there. He says, I think the key is what you said earlier, to drive people to your social media is to advertise the video that seems to be doing well. You'll get further reach to help hook people, and that's 100% correct. You know, it's drawing people to that content, and you're hoping that that's a big enough hook to get them to stay, whether it's subscribe or follow your other socials or all those kind of things. It's, you know, you want to make sure that you're trying to get your best stuff out there and hook people in, and then try to keep them there, you know, for the long term. I mean, obviously, if you produce something that's fantastic and then it's just garbage from that point forward, you're going to lose people, obviously. But, you know, as long as you're sort of maintaining a standard, you're going to do really well. And the other part, you know, and this sort of leads into something else. The big thing is diversification for me. So, you know, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I am on Pinterest, for God's sakes. I am on all these different platforms, and I am a firm believer in diversification, because if anybody here is on MySpace still, you're going to have to let me know how that's doing, because that used to be huge, and it used to be huge for music. It was the thing. It was bigger than Facebook. All the bands. You know, it's crazy in that sense. You know, it's basically MySpace used to be huge. There were some huge people out of there that have since disappeared. And the reason that they've kind of disappeared is that they failed to expand themselves to a point and self-promote themselves to a point where that they could survive something. If Twitter were to close tomorrow, you know, would you still have a presence? If all your eggs are in Twitter's basket, are you still there? And I mean, there's lots of new social media stuff coming out, you know, going on to those things and trying to establish a presence. I'm not saying invest, you know, to the point where you're all the time where you know, but if you start getting momentum, some of those people will follow you. Over. Right? Yeah. So I had a side project in VidMe, which is the exact same thing as YouTube. It was just a different channel, different basis, all that kind of stuff. And just as a side note here is that basically VidMe paid me. We had generated funds, and then they shut down. We figured that was the end of that, but they did actually pay us last week. So that's kind of cool. You know, big ups to them for being solid business people and stuff. But I think they have projects on the go, so I mean, it only benefits them, because now if Ryan Duffy, who was the mind behind VidMe, gets something else going, I'm on his mailing list, and he says, hey, come and do this, because he was a really super guy to me. Yeah. I'll be like, absolutely, I'll be there, you know. And I think with smaller platforms too, you have a better opportunity to grow. Right. So, for example, on YouTube, we've got just under 1,000 subscribers. On VidMe, we had like 3,500 subscribers, because VidMe liked us. They were promoting us, all that kind of stuff. It was a good relationship. It worked well for us. But, you know, in the end, they closed down. So if we had just said, we're not doing YouTube anymore, screw it, we're shutting that down, we're not going to post any content there, we're just going to do VidMe, we would have been dead in the water. Right. You know, same thing with YouTube. They've changed how they monetize things. They've set up certain levels. Are people going to get those? Some of them will, some of them won't. But that doesn't mean that you can't draw value out of YouTube. Doesn't mean that there's not other ways to make money out of YouTube.
But I mean, the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, is YouTube can do whatever they like, and you're just going to have to kind of like it. And they could shut you out completely. They might go full network. You never know, and just say you're done. You know, like we might take your user content, we might not. You know, so having that diverse kind of base is important. You know, and multiple revenue streams. You know.
Because the more you do, like the more multiple revenue streams you have, like not that our band's made a ton of money, I won't pretend that it has. Like since posting on iTunes like 5 years ago, I think we've made $200 US in 5 years. So like music sales, not much. Merch sales, shirts, those sell well.
But if we take an album as an example of diversification, right? I mean, if you go old school, all you do is sell CDs. So that means you put them in a record store, you sell CDs, that's it. That's your only source of revenue. But that's not the case anymore. No. Right? You've got iTunes, so you made money off that. I mean, you're producing the same music. Ultimately, your product is the music. And it's how you get it out. You put it on vinyl. You put it on CD. You make tapes to get to the people that, for whatever reason, want to carry pencils around and listen to shitty audio. Do you want to put it on Spotify? Do you want to put it on all these other streaming services?
Being everywhere.
Do you want to put it on Google Play? Do you want to put it like iTunes? Do you want to submit it to the radio station so they play that and have that in circulation? Yeah. What do you want to do, right? Because there are so many things. So you can use that one thing that you've created to create multiple things. You can sell albums at shows still. You can, you can have a direct subscription service to your album stuff. You can utilize social media. You can utilize Patreon, saying, if I hit this goal, we'll make a new album. You'll be the first to get it. All that kind of stuff. There are so many things. You can kickstart albums, which people have done. There's a million different ways to sort of do it, right? But all it comes down to is that how you market that out to the group that you're in.
And is it good? Like if the music sucks, you could have the best marketing. Like I could hire, if I could afford Gary Vee to market my band, and our music is the worst music on the planet, people are just gonna mock us. Like I saw a boosted post for a band recently came up in my newsfeed. They did a cover of Post Malone's Rockstar,
right?
And it was terrible. Like one of the worst videos I've ever seen, and literally just hate comments, like just like absolutely nothing redeeming. One person was like, hey guys, do what you love, it's okay if people don't like it, like, just whatever. Like one person, the rest were just like tearing them apart. And the internet can be vicious, but like I think Gary talks a little bit about being self-aware. Like if you know it sucks, don't hope it's going to change, or don't hope that people are going to not think it sucks. Like if you truly know to your core you're not good at something, then find out what you're good at and switch to that. And I think he talks about that a little bit too. Yeah. Just like go to your passion and be self-aware. Be aware of like the quality of what you're putting out, because if you're not, you'll get humbled really, really easily. Really. And it hurts. I don't know. The trolls on the internet are not kind.
Yeah. I mean, and it's about pivoting. Jerry says here that the thing with VidMe is that you got in early before it got saturated, and that's the key. And that's absolutely the case.
Which, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, so Gary's all about that. Like one thing that like I think adds to Gary's pedigree is he openly admits in Crushing It that he was at YouTube like doing really well, and then he switched to YouTube's competitor. Yeah. They offered him a stake in the company, and he thought for sure because of the team behind them, they were going to trump YouTube and become the new giant. And he openly admits, because I jumped for the money right away instead of the long-term play, I really missed out, because YouTube obviously still exists. I don't even remember the name of the other.
I can't either. But the thing is with that too, and that goes back to speaking about diversification. There's for no reason you shouldn't be able to do both, unless they've got I mean, they're offering him. They were offering him stake, and they were probably offering a non-competition clause in which he got compensated. So is it the right choice? Maybe. It doesn't mean that you can't go back to YouTube when that venture fails.
Which he's done. Yeah. But at the time when it wasn't saturated, like he mentions, like my channel would be way higher now if I had just stuck with it, which I hadn't. But like he predicted Facebook buying Instagram because Instagram shot up within a year. It was just this huge app, and so he's like, I think what he's good at, and which he'll admit to, or what he says he's good at too. Like he'll say this is he's good at looking at the past, seeing a pattern, and then seeing where things are going to go and then banking on it. So he doesn't always get the right thing. But like he bought Bitcoin when it was like $40 and now it's whatever. Like he's
it's tanking like a rock
because everyone bought it overnight.
It went Bitcoin is funny because it was up to like $20,000 US. Right. and it is like way below 10 now. So
Oh,
people
really?
have lost their shirts on this stuff. It's I mean that's the nature of thing. I mean sometimes
When
you
that
know
many people buy something, it's gonna
Yeah.
has to inflate, bubble, and then pop like
Yeah.
the 2008 economy, basically.
Yeah, I mean it's so you got to get in at the right time is really is, and that's what Jerry was going on with the
100%.
with the VidMe thing is you got to get in the right time. If you bought Bitcoin at the right time, you're probably doing well. If you bought Bitcoin in the last year, you're probably fucked. It's plain and simple, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's how things are. If you get things on the right time, for example, like I was in film before YouTube. My first film came out before YouTube.
Yeah.
And then YouTube came, and then I tried to put the film on. I started working with it early, and they basically filed copyright infringement claims against me for utilizing stuff that I had contracts for doing it. I just actually put the film back out 15 years later,
Yeah.
on there. They let me play it. They just, they won't take it down, and they're putting the money to one of the music companies. I don't ultimately care at the end. I could probably go and dig out the contracts and say, listen, I have a contract for this from 15 years ago. Like, let me get paid for it. But it's, it's not going to get terribly that much. It's more of a nostalgia thing for me more than anything else. And at this point, too, the film made its money, so I'm kind of just, if you didn't see it here, watch it.
Yeah.
If you did see it and you lost your DVD, watch it again. Again, it's going back and building my brand and myself, and it's investing in it, and it's giving something away for free. And I have no problem for that because, like I said, I filmed the film, made the money, did all that kind of stuff in that timeline. It's 15 years later.
Yeah, the
It's
amount of
not a
people who are
huge
going to
deal.
buy it probably are in the smaller, but they could probably message you. And
it gets a few thousand views in a couple days, and it does
pretty good.
it does
Adds
all
to the
right.
channel.
Yeah, it adds to the channel exactly. So, it's you got to invest in yourself, and But back to my early YouTube example. So I gave up on YouTube. I'm like, this is garbage.
Yeah.
Which was in retrospect, probably a mistake.
Yeah.
Because if I kept on making film and doing stuff and kept on doing mountain bike stuff and producing it to that, because I produced films afterwards and I had a bunch of footage that actually was going to produce a third film, but we kind of ran out a little bit of money. Like it was kind of getting to a point where it was, unbalanced and stuff because, mountain biking was starting to decline and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to finish on a high note. I mean, that's something that I took from Red Bull is I want to always kind of finish. They used to do events and they would build them up to like ultimate popularity and then they just stop, which I thought was crazy. But there's some merit to it because you don't want to be remember, like especially in music, guys they'll put out an album, it'll crush it, and then they'll put out another album, it'll crush it, and then they'll put out 5 subsequent albums that absolutely suck balls and nobody buys, and then they'll go and they'll play a show and everybody's looking at them going,
why are you not playing?
Why are these guys playing? Like nobody listens to these guys anymore. Why would I go to that show?
Or why are you playing anything off those 5 albums? I want to hear the first 2 albums, and that's it. That's
exactly.
all I want. So all they can do is 10th year, 15th year anniversaries.
Right.
And that's
not saying that you can't, have a career like that. I mean, Guns N' Roses went back on the road. I mean, it's not like they were producing new stuff, and they sold out stadiums.
They were playing some stuff of Chinese Democracy, which I thought was very weird.
Yeah,
I saw them and Slash is playing Chinese Democracy, the title track, and I was like, was not expecting this. But yeah, it was. You're right.
But they didn't put an album out to go tour. So I mean, it's it depends where you
like
sort of
Jaws,
want to.
right? Jaws 1 is amazing.
Yeah.
Jaws 2 is like it's okay, and 3 and 4 are like the worst movies you've ever seen. And like, why? It's like you haven't really tarnished the legacy of the first one, but like if you just make one movie that blows people's minds, like Gladiator, won Best Picture, really good. You can't really make a Gladiator 2. They tried with 300. They made 300 2, and it wasn't as good as 300. And like sometimes knowing when to quit when you're ahead, and then just to have that legacy, that unblemished, like perfect.
And that'll draw people to the other projects as well, right? If you have something that's unblemished, right, and you go and work on something, as long as it's a complete separation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it might be still a film, it might be still music, it might still be photo work, it might be a new project, and you go and do that, people will follow you to that.
Yeah.
And that's again the importance of self-branding, right? I mean, if they don't know who the director of, or who wrote 300 or any of those kind of things, they're not necessarily going to follow, right? Frank Miller, who basically illustrated 300 in the comic books, did a bunch of stuff with Dark Knight. So I mean, they're all completely different streams of thought, and he's been a very successful, comic creator for years.
Yeah, he did Watchmen too, right? Or no, is that somebody else?
Yeah.
Watchmen, Sin City.
Yeah.
And then I think he
300
drew for Daredevil and drew for Batman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
So,
had a pretty good career.
yeah.
Probably the only comic book artist I've heard of, and I won't, probably because his stuff was taken to film. But when you're good at that, do we have more comments?
Rosenkrantz says Scott needs to talk about his favorite scene from 302.
This random scene. I wouldn't call it my favorite. I think I saw it with Zach. I can't remember, but we both burst out laughing. Whoever was with, we burst out laughing. This female general goes in to talk to a male general, and they go to have this like meeting to discuss peace or like what they're gonna do, and then they just have the weirdest sex scene like I've ever seen in a movie, like just beyond strange.
Yeah.
And it had no purpose. I don't think it was based on a comic because I don't think there was a 302 comic. Maybe there was.
I don't know.
Random scene, like stupid. So, anyways, there's that random little tidbit.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Zach. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So jumping back to the book.
The book.
What is your favorite part? What was your favorite part of the book? Like what did you get the most out of in?
Well, I think his part is really smart because he only wrote about half this book. The other half is other people wrote it for him.
Right.
And he puts their stories in, makes it 250 pages, sells it, puts his name on it, and he gets all the money. Like, so smart. Like, he's not revolutionary, but he's a great communicator. And I think because he's good at that, he has a bit of an inflated presence. I don't know what it would be, but like for me, I think what the special is the back half of the book. He gives you, especially if you're brand new to socials, he gives you like a Reader's Digest of what this platform is and what you could do on it, and then a sort of it's like a whimsical story of a perfect situation where two average people create something amazing on each platform, and they're a little whimsical at times, but I feel like they're grounded in reality. And even if you kind of use that as your blueprint for whatever social media you did, like, so Musical.ly, I tried it. I don't feel like I get it. I don't feel like I could deliver very well. So like I stopped. Facebook is the one I understand the most. So my band's numbers on Facebook are they're our highest social and probably our best engagement because Facebook is the world that I know and understand. But it opened up a bit more about Instagram. Jab, Jab, Right Hook, which is a little bit older, so the platforms have evolved slightly. But like, there's like 20 case studies of each social media on it. And so having Jab, Jab plus the back half kind of allows you to tweak what you're saying. We're getting more comments?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What is...
So DJ Tully's, he's saying, would buying ads and boosting a post to increase its social proof be equivalent to buying fake likes or followers? Or should you let the social proof grow organically as you should with followers? See, my thing with that is if you're buying ads, you're just directing people to your content.
Real people.
Yeah, exactly.
Way better than buying fake likes.
So if you're doing AdSense and you're doing Facebook, you are basically people that are engaged in the platform. You are directing them towards your content. So the hope is that they're going to enjoy it and they're going to go. The great thing with Facebook is that when you go in the back end there, you can detail city, age group, likes, what
everything.
They do, what their hobby is, all that kind of stuff. There is probably, in my opinion, nothing better than probably Facebook for analytics for advertising. I mean, that platform is built for it. I mean, if anybody ever wondered how Facebook makes their money, that's how they make their money. Huge. And that's why they want all that information. That's why they want you to fill in where you went to school, who your friends are, what club did you go to. They want you to check
they want you to be.
It's not because of the social aspect. They want to sell that for advertising purposes. Yeah. And they do a phenomenal job of it. So you can target things down. I know you guys have used it for shows, I think.
So we're playing March 31st at the Rec Room.
Yeah,
and that hasn't been announced yet. So this is the first announcement. So whoever's watching, congrats, you guys get secret info. But I took compilation of video footage from the past 3 years of us being in a band, posted it, boosted it, and it I think it has a reach of like 2,000 and like 1.5 thousand views, which like. Facebook counts a view after like 4 seconds, I think. So it's a little inflated. It's not quite like YouTube, but I was able to do that. But yeah, just to answer your question, Alex, buying likes, what you're doing is you're sending money to someone in Indonesia or Asia or that is whatever the case is somewhere, and they have a bunch of bots with fake Facebook accounts that go and like your page. So all that is going to do, because Facebook only allows you to see 5 to 10% of your audience, I think, per post without paying for it, you're inflating your audience with people who aren't genuine fans. And so you're going to have to work against yourself, because all these fake accounts, that's going to show up in their newsfeed, and they don't care. They're not going to convert to fans. They're not going to come out to watch you, DJ a set. They're not going to come out to your SoundCloud and listen to your music. All you're doing is inflating it so that a gatekeeper says, okay, they've got good social numbers, and maybe I'm more interested in that because of the social numbers. But like, if you look at, sorry.
Yeah,
forget what I did not sleep well last night. I got home at like
it's all good. Yeah, I'll speak to a couple of things. Numbers aren't necessarily important. So subscribers, I mean, if you're on YouTube, they mean something now because you have to hit that 1,000-point mark. But I mean, beyond that, I mean, it's really what comes down to is who's watching your videos, how much they're watching your videos, and how much time they're investing in your videos.
And the quality of the relationship with that one person.
Yeah,
it's not about 10,000. It's if you have 100 people that you have like an amazing relationship with, they'll go to bat for you. They will they'll bend over backwards for you if they truly love what you're doing. Smaller audience, 10,000 people, and it's like you're okay. You're gonna have very different. Like, I don't know what I would prefer in that case.
Yeah.
But
I know with music and all that kind of stuff, a lot of times that they will look at your following to see where you're at. If you're breaking into music, if you have 5 followers on Twitter, and you got 10 Facebook fans and all that kind of stuff, and you send your proposals to a venue to play, they might not pick you up because of your social numbers, and that's a reality of it. So will some people buy followers and all that kind of stuff to get to them to a certain point? Absolutely. Is it going to get you past some gatekeepers in the real world? Yes, because I think a lot of times when we talk about, and we were talking about the clubs and the venues earlier, having mistakes in social media and not really understanding, I think a lot of people that are running venues don't necessarily understand. There's some that have some great social media teams that are phenomenal.
Yeah.
For example, the Grey Eagle, where I work all the time, they understand socials and getting it out.
Great.
Their marketing team is spot on. And there's other venues that have no fucking clue. They have no clue what's going on. They have no idea. They don't pay any attention to it and all that kind of stuff, to a detriment to their business. I mean, they're lucky because, they've got obviously money backing them, and they've got, obviously shows going on, but I mean, they could do so much better by creating that buzz. Even the Rec Room that just opened up, I mean, I see stuff for them all the time, and they're actively, promoting on socials and all that kind of stuff, and that's what I mean. They're pushing it, whether it's 10 at 10, that has a show, and they've got video from that show, and they're pushing it out to everybody, whether it's Facebook events, inviting people to that. People are going about it in a smart way. But buying followers and all that kind of stuff, is it going to get you, ultimately at the end? No. Will it give you a boost in the beginning?
It could.
Maybe it might.
People are also getting
nobody
smarter.
wants to be like number 2 follower, number 3 follower. Sometimes when there's larger numbers, people are more inclined to follow because they're like, I don't want to miss out. Like, why does everybody follow this guy? This guy's got 500,000 followers. Why am I not following? Why have I just heard about him? But I mean, the internet's a big place. I mean, there are a lot of people that don't, know who people are. Like, if you go through the book, he has examples. He talks about Casey Neistat on YouTube. He talks about Jared Polin, and some people aren't even going to know who those people are. Most people will know Casey. Jared Polin, a lot of people won't know. But Jared Polin's a photographer, and that's how I know who he is.
Yeah.
He was a concert photographer to start, which is another reason why I know him.
Yeah.
And I mean, he went to YouTube, and he sort of self-branded. But I mean, it's funny because this is my one critique of Gary's book. He has these people in there, and he talks about what they did and sort of using the Crushing It model.
Anyone who read his book, which, like, the model is not new. You've just put a name on your version of it, and so these people read your book. Whether or not they read your book, maybe they'd still be successful.
And I mean, anybody, like, I mean, if Gary Vaynerchuk came to me and said, JD, do you want to be in my next book and tell your story? I'd be like, sure. Like, I would, because it's not that, not that I'm 100% sold into what he's saying. I understand a lot of the things, and a lot of the stuff, to me, is just common sense.
You understand it better than most people, I think.
But, I'm not going to say no, because I know his reach. Like, I know, like, this is trending now. It's like number 2 on the bestsellers
Yeah, it's
I
huge
mean,
right now.
and that's only through smart marketing more than anything else. Because if anybody was following his Twitter account, before the thing, he was doing things like, if you buy 10 books, show the receipt. I might have lunch with you, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Or you buy 100 books and we'll do this, or we'll put you in a draw to fly you out to New York to have lunch. So people were buying 10, 15 copies, which you don't really need. I mean, I bought one, I read it, I can give it away. I'm not going to miss it.
Yeah, totally.
It's not like I'm going to go back and reference it. I mean, I just sort of had the tabs in the book for myself to for the show to sort of reread and just sort of hit on some points that, I had talked about, like I said, we've had conversations, and I think a lot of the stuff that he actually says that we had talked about well in advance before the release of this book. So, yeah, Frono's photo is Jared Polin, absolutely Rosencrantz. So what else do we have? Bullshit Corner says, advertising, which is better to drive your viewers to YouTube, Facebook ads, or YouTube ads, which is cheaper with the greatest reach. Yeah,
totally.
I would go Facebook ads over AdSense. AdSense isn't as accurate. You've really got to kind of go through the key, like the tags and all that kind of stuff. I don't find it as intuitive.
Yeah.
Whereas Facebook, you can zero it right down.
Really simple.
It's straightforward, and a lot of times you'll see the feedback that you get right away. And
Totally.
I mean, Facebook's good for that. And I think Facebook, the fake accounts aren't as rampant as they are on Google.
No, they're easier to get rid of. Like, they're easier to spot. And, like, there's a band that I know for sure they debuted recently and bought likes.
Right.
Like, they don't have the following that they're trying to appear that they do. And when you look through their posts, like, I think the market is smarter than it used to be, and I think buying likes becomes less and less relevant as it goes on. Facebook, if they catch you, they delete all those likes. So, like, to begin with, you could be spending money that's going to go away later. But, like, when you have a band that's from Calgary, Alberta, and every single person who likes the post has some Asian character name that you can't even read or pronounce because it's a completely different alphabet, it's really obvious what's going on there. Yeah. And, like, the gatekeepers who are the gatekeepers for what you really want to be, like the high-end guys, they don't necessarily look at your likes. They look at your engagement. So they look at, okay, maybe a band's got 3,000 likes, but each post is getting 200 to 300 likes or comments or shares on Facebook. That's really good engagement. Yeah. Whereas, like, if you have 100,000 likes, but you're getting 2, 5, 10, or something small, it's really obvious that you've either inflated that or these people are just kind of static fans. They don't really care. You just have a large network of friends and family or whatever the case is. Right. They're not really interested in what you're doing because it's not showing up in their news feeds because Facebook's edge rank Facebook is so catered to you because they want you glued to it, addicted to it, scrolling through news feed all the time. That's why it's so successful. If their edge rank platform didn't work and you were seeing a bunch of stuff you're not interested in, you wouldn't spend time on Facebook. Yeah. And I think that's what it comes down to. So just really on buying likes, like, it's really obvious when people do it now, and you could lose that at some point, and that money is much better spent on ads. I mean, for myself, what I do on socials, and this is just an example, Instagram I am terrible at. I'm terrible at Instagram. I'll be the first to admit it. I have made a concerted effort after reading the book, if it did anything for me, and just like, you need to start doing some things again. Yeah. So I started, posting more. I started, trying to understand. I didn't understand up until about 2 days ago what the hell Instagram stories were, right? And how they were even remotely useful. Yeah. But I kind of get it because it's kind of, for lack of a better term, it's kind of my, this is me feed. It disappears after a while. It's like, if you follow it throughout a day, you kind of see what I'm doing. Yeah. It's not just the, produced post that I typically post. Like, I will go out, take some photographs, I'll have a stockpile of them, and then I'll sort of release them slowly. That's kind of what I do on Instagram. My Facebook stories is like, hey, I went and bought a Pickle Rick Pop yesterday. Here you go, right? I wouldn't put that in my feed, but I will definitely put it in my stories. It adds a human character to it, I think. So, and what I've also started doing is communicating it and, sort of reaching out to people. So I've been focusing, because I'm based in Calgary, and I just I'm a bit of a homebody. Like, I mean, I will tour and all that kind of stuff, and I do have a tour coming up. But it's funny that you consider yourself a homebody, because I see you, like, when we do a podcast, but I see you out all the time. Yeah, so it's kind of funny.
I am.
guess you push
When I
yourself.
say homebody, I mean Calgary. I like staying in Calgary. I like sticking close to home. I like to be able to go home. I like my own bed.
Right.
I kind of like those things. I do love to travel. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
usually it's like when I do that, it's I'm going and I'm leaving for a month or two, and then I go and I do it, and then I'm done and I'm good for a while, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of I don't like to sort of jet set all over the place. But on Instagram, I've been focusing on Calgary photography and music. So, I've been going out and liking people that have been posting in those categories. And the way I'm doing it, and it's the same sort of thing, like the jab, right hook. I'll go out and I'll say, hey, nice photograph, or I'll say, hey, that's a really cool location. Where is that? So, for example, I saw it was a rap guy. I had no idea who he was. He had a video shot. It was a super cool location. I'm just like, hey, that's really cool. That was a really cool video.
Yeah.
That was a great location. Where is that?
Yeah.
And
you don't even mention what you're doing. You
Yeah.
don't even mention you have a channel because
No.
he'll click on it otherwise,
Yeah.
right? If he's interested.
yeah, so he can come to me that way or not. But the thing is next thing I'm getting messages from the guy. He's like, hey, I've looked at your stuff. It's really cool. I love your photographs. We need to work together.
Perfect.
So just going out and seeing who else is out in the world, putting themselves out in the world, made that connection. Would have you found me otherwise? Probably not. Right? And like I said, diversity is the key. Like, I shoot photos for the Portal. I shoot photos for Concert Addicts. I shoot photos for the YYC scene. I shoot photographs for myself. I do it for, publicists. I do it for all these kind of stuff. It's, that's the thing. When you're in that kind of business, you diversify, right? Mm-hmm. Because I want the largest reach. The Portal, Concert Addicts, YYC are all very similar publications, but they all have different reach and different demographics. Right. So, having content in all of those it just means that it's out there, right?
Yeah.
And typically what happens with those things is, I will give away a certain amount. Mm-hmm. For example, I'll take photographs. Usually if I throw it up on socials, I know it's gone to the world, right? Yeah. Somebody's going to steal it. Somebody's going to post it elsewhere. At that point, I don't really care. It's, as long as I sort of get tagged in, I'm usually fine with it. You know, as long as they're not, cutting out my watermark, and all my stuff is watermarked that goes out like that, and posting it somewhere. I'm usually good with it. But all it does is, I have so much, like when the ex-ambassadors came here, their publicists were talking to me and all that kind of stuff. Nelly Furtado came through, her publication team ultimately got a hold of me. So, all those kind of things. I just throw out, essentially freebies, and you kind of hope it comes around, right? Your work has to be, and again, the one thing that I feel he doesn't touch on enough is, if your work isn't good enough, it's not going to come back. If I took, a shot of these guys with a potato and put it out, chances are it's going nowhere. It's going to, sort of go like a thing. Hey, Warren, thanks for joining in. Hey, we got Jesse from Sevens Wild.
Oh,
we miss you too, dude. And Jesse's a great guy. I did the videos for Seven Wild, and a bunch of photographs for them. They got great stuff. They are the theme music of Lloyd and JD podcast. So that little clip beforehand with the little anime thing. Yeah. So, you always got to work with people and, sort of expand your sort of reach. It's amazing how, organically you can grow that stuff. And it's just sort of making yourself accessible. And that's what I think the key to social media is making yourself accessible. Yeah. Making yourself human, letting know people that they can contact you and reach out, and not just be kind of throwing stuff in people's face all the time, just saying, this is what you need to do kind of thing.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So in your band, what strategies you can implement from the book, or is it just kind of more...
So in the band, he's really pushing music. I don't know if it's Musicali. I don't know how you actually pronounce it, but I don't know. Like, it's interesting to try, but I feel like if you can't hack it, like, he's able to like understand what it is and create the content, which helps him. Yeah. And he's also got a creative team. Like, his office in New York is huge. He's got so many people, so many bright minds. Like, he's set up for success because on so many levels, he's got the right people working with him and for him. And like, I think that's one thing that isn't mentioned at all in the book is his team. Yeah. He thanks his wife for being supportive and amazing, but like the team he has at VaynerMedia really help him to create. So there's a guy who follows him around who does the Daily V called D-Rock, and he's got a few other people doing it now, so D-Rock can take time off and they switch her over. But like without them, he wouldn't have anyone to film. And he'll thank them and stuff, but like literally... It's not just like one person can only do so much. It's all about your team as well. And I think that's something that like isn't mentioned enough. being that you've run a podcast for a long time, you know, some days where someone can't make it or whatever, then the podcast can't happen, right? But like by yourself, you do it all the time, but you're less compelling because you only have one opinion on something. Right. So like the diversification of a team is much stronger. Without my band, I would be an acoustic performer, and I don't have a voice that if I have just an acoustic guitar, I'm gonna like mesmerize the crowd.
Right.
I'm not. That's not me. But in a high energy rock band, like with Jordan behind me and Mike and Nick and my brother was playing, like when we're together, that energy kind of is created, and then our show is exciting and successful. And that's without your team, you're nothing. And I feel like surrounding yourself with people who are good team members really goes a long way. So like you and I talking on a weekly basis about social media, I think sharpens both of us.
Yep.
And helps us to improve. We talk about what's working, what's not. We'll go for lunch and we'll do stuff like this. And I think surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded, who care about the same things as you and want success for you in the same way that you want success for them allows you to do that. So I think what I'm going to do with this book is spend more time on Instagram and Twitter, because Twitter I've just always thought is dead in the water, and you've proven me wrong many times. Yeah. And so Twitter is the social media I'm going to work on the most. I'm going to improve our Instagram. And last time I was good at socials for about 2 months before I took like December and January off. So and not that I made a conscious choice, but just my natural ebb and flow, the way I am as a human being kicked in. So I'm going to try for 3 months and then have less of a break in between the next time, and maybe I can start to build those habits and get better. So like going to the gym's always been a struggle for me, but I've been going to the gym successfully for 2 months now, which is good. And that hopefully that.
See, that's the bonus of having a team. That's the bonus of having a team, is that you can, when you need to take a break, there are always other people that can step in.
Right.
So if there's multiple people posting to an account, you get a lot more coverage across the board, rather than, you know, just like little chunks here and there. And I mean, both my Twitter and Instagram, you can kind of tell a lot of times when I'm really like when I'm busy or I'm doing photo shoots and stuff like that, because it's just dead air.
Yeah.
You know, and Twitter's kind of weird because it's kind of an ongoing thing and things get passed through so fast. You know, you can post the same thing 3-4 times in a day on Twitter, and you're probably not going to annoy anybody because they're probably not going to see it all.
Right.
Depends
Unless
on
anyone picture newsfeed and goes through it, but that probably doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, you typically delete the other post, as long as there's no engagement on it or whatever the case may be, right? If there's huge engagement, you just kind of, you know, boost it up. But, you know, with a band, I would think that, you know, if everybody had access to the Instagram and all posting different things, but I mean, part of that
we do have that, but like everyone's got their skill set, and no one else enjoys marketing like I do.
And there's you got to strategize, and you got to make sure that you're not, you know, duplicating stuff, and you know,
having the same post.
You kind of want to have a cohesive unit there. But the interesting thing, like you talk about Gary and having a team and all that kind of stuff. I think the great equalizer in this world for somebody like, I mean, I don't have a team.
Right.
I am me. That's it. Like I am it.
You're a one-man show.
You know, I work with Lloyd on the podcast. You know, I work with Dave on this podcast. You know, I've had you on this podcast twice. You know, I will reach out to people and I'll work with people because I believe that the most important thing is, and YouTube as well. Like if you watch my YouTube channel and you watch it, you know, you'll see that I'll post every once in a while. I'm on a lot of other people's YouTube channels. It's like, hey, JD, do you want to do this? I seldom say no.
Right.
I'll just go and do it, whether it's to help them out or all, because I believe in cross-pollination and working together and all that kind of stuff. I think you're stronger. I think that's your team. If you don't have a team, is getting those relationships and working with those people and, you know, sort of building out, right? Because, you know, as you mentioned early on with the podcast, what we did initially is we were all about music, and then we would gain basically from your band would come on and your fans would see it. If they thought, you know, these guys were good, they'd probably stay and watch a few more episodes. If they didn't, they just watched for you and went on. And that's fine, and that's going to happen. To me, that's organic advertising.
Yeah.
What do we have?
One last
DJ Tully, should you use all 30 hashtags on Instagram or as many relevant ones as you can, or should you use only 4 to 5 very specific ones? I think it depends on the post. I really think hashtags really depend on the post, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're using hashtags. I think it is good to research, you know, sort of what tags. Like if you go into Instagram search and you put in that hashtag, those first 3 posts.
First 9, yeah,
Yeah.
the top,
Like-
or the first thing people are going to
Yeah.
see. No one's going to scroll through a hashtag for forever.
So those ones are, those guys are hitting on it. And you want to kind of see what they're doing. You want to see how your content relates to those.
Yeah.
And you want to see what hashtags they're using. And you can pretty much narrow down what are the best hashtags. So, I mean, you don't want to randomly kind of do stuff. I know some guys that were on Twitter and Instagram, and they would, hashtag everything Donald Trump or Oprah or whatever it is.
It needs to be relevant.
It needs to be relevant for one. There are sometimes you can find niche things on Instagrams. For example, you'll find somebody that's generated a hashtag like Alberta views or Calgary views, which is to do with landscape photography. So I will do those if I'm doing specifically landscapes, but I won't use them if I'm doing concert photography. So I've got to make sure that, they're specific to the point. So, I mean, doing your research, I mean, that's part of the work of it, right? I mean, we talk about, putting in the time and the hours. That's part of your work, is understanding how those hashtags are going to work for you and seeing what you get as results. I mean, you might use a hashtag and your post blows up. You might use it the next time, it might not work, and you want to kind of try to understand. And that's
why.
the game. That's the game, right? I mean, once you start to understand those and able to see the trends and utilize those trends, they're going to work that much better for you.
It takes 5 minutes to pick the proper hashtags for the post and do it. It's an extra 5 minutes, but really it's 5 minutes. And like, I'll be lazy often. I have like 3 different notes on my phone, and I'll just like, whatever the photo is kind of about, I'll copy paste those.
Yeah.
But like, if you really want to do it, spend the extra 5 minutes and do it properly. Change your hashtags up, I think. And I think Gary says 30, like, use all of them. Depends on, like, he's not right on everything. That's what he does, and it's working for him. But you've got to find out what works for you, I think.
Yeah.
And picking relevant hashtags goes a long way.
Yeah. So DJ Trolley saying, also noticing a trend of people putting hashtags in the comments to keep their initial description look cleaner. Is this beneficial as people say it is?
That's what I do.
You can do it, most definitely. It's more beneficial if somebody comes in and tags it for you. To be honest, if a lot of times people are part of groups and they utilize a hashtag, they'll come in, and I see that a lot with, especially with my City of Calgary stuff. So guys will come in, they'll see it. I did a photograph of the bow, and somebody will come in and they'll hashtag it, to a group that they're doing, because they all want to see what's going on. So they're trying to keep it concise. I mean, it'll work, but I mean, to be honest, in Instagram, I look at the picture. I don't read any of the stuff underneath. It's not the hashtags. I usually find people in the things. Even when I search hashtags, I'm looking at the photos. It's your content is first.
Yeah,
absolutely,
100%.
your content is first. Your hashtags are just going to help people find, what it is. And as long as you kind of have separation, I always have the paragraph, have the separation, and then have the hashtags. Is how I go about it. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, to be honest.
I think one thing about a hashtag, like my band has created a hashtag. Like, it's good to have one that's yours, so it files, and if anyone finds that, they can go through and find anything related to that. So like, I've cataloged our band for the past 5 years or 4 years, I think, using TPLT and then the year. So if anyone wants to see what we did in a certain year, they can click that hashtag, look through it. And I put that in amongst other ones, so it's not the only one, but that allows us to be filed under our own thing, that it's not going to be shared with 8 other people.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, even large corporations have hashtags that are shared between 2 large corporations, and it can give kind of confusing and mixed messages.
I think it's a really good thing for anybody to do that's branding themselves. I use J Dirom, I use Lloyd and JD. Occasionally I use J Dirom Photography, but typically I just use my name, because I find the other one too big. But I'll hashtag them in that sense, because I want people to find me. When people know my name or hear my name, I want them to look and find it. And I found it's actually had some sort of results on Google. So now when you start typing in certain things, like, it starts coming up. So it's and I do that from anytime I have a chance, I will go to somewhere like a Best Buy or an Apple store, and I will type it in their Google, because then it's not polluted by my garbage. Yeah. So and it's just an open random thing. So I want to see if it comes up. You know how when you start typing, it'll suggest what's there. So I mean, that's always good. Jesse, in my opinion, I find the hashtag that suits what you are doing to be persistent with it. Example: whenever I go to post for Sevens Wild, I would always go rock and roll renegade, because that's what defined us. Absolutely. So, I mean, 7 Wild, rock and roll band. So perfect hashtag renegade, because that's your guys' album.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you want, right? I mean, you want people to associate those things as well. And people start to associate those names. The big thing about branding is recognition. So, I mean,
if you see something,
yeah.
you know what it is.
So knowing a name, knowing a logo, all those kind of things, and having that recognition, even if you don't know what it is, it's sometimes good to put it out there. I mean, that's, in well-established brands, whether you put the big McDonald's arches somewhere, you don't have to say McDonald's. People know what it is. Yeah. And I mean, even if you're unknown and you have a logo and you put it out there and people see it time and time again, sometimes when they come across your stuff, for example, you've got the show coming up and they've seen your logo, they recognize the name. If they've seen it all over the place, and that's my argument always been for bands and postering, to continue to poster in things like record stores and outside, in popular places, outside clubs, is that at least when that comes up in their feed, they may not have ever really kind of paid any kind of attention. They may not have gone up and read a thing, but they may have looked at it, seen it for a second, if they like the logo, register for a second, and then they're like, hey, I remember that.
Maybe 5 or 6 interactions later, there's actually a conversion kind of thing.
And it's being persistent and always doing that kind of thing. So
I've got to head to work very soon.
All right.
So if we can wrap up.
So we're going to wrap things
Closing
up.
thing.
We've got 5E in here now. We do appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much for dropping in, spending your time with us today. Hopefully you got some value out of it. Gary Vaynerchuk's crushing it. It's a good book. I mean, if you're already doing socials and winning in socials, is it a necessary buy? No. Do you have to go out and buy it? No. I'd honestly just recommend following him on YouTube and Twitter. Follow his Facebook page. You're going to get the information through that kind of thing because he gives it away for free.
He gives it so you got to watch a few videos to get all that. So yes, it's free, but I agree. There's nothing in here that you wouldn't get from anything else. This is concise and for someone who wants to understand certain socials better. And it kind of gives you a formula for if you don't know how to take the next step, there's some stuff in there. So it's not the be all end all. I enjoyed it. I think it's a good read. I'm happy to loan my copy to anyone who asks for it, and any of his other books. But I don't know. Overall, it's worth checking out. And I appreciate your time talking about socials.
It was really good. I appreciate it. Again, thanks to all you guys for tuning in. This will be, I will end up hosting this video on my other YouTube channel. It'll also be linked here for a while. So if you want to share it on your Facebook, all that kind of stuff. It's great. Appreciate it all. Feel free to tweet at me at Pain Inc. That's my social media handle. If you're not following me there, that's where I spend the vast majority of my time, but you can get me on Facebook, all those kind of things. Scott, you can get Scott.
So I've got at Scooter Scoots on Twitter. I might have to change that. I've got,
that's some awesome branding.
Scott W. Bennett on Instagram, and then at the Path Less Traveled Band for everything except Twitter, which didn't have the character limit, so it's at TPLT Official.
All right. Until next time, see ya.